Chosen number 4, which is a historical perspective on the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. During the Second World War in 1940, Nazi Germany began a series of bombings of the big English cities and the strategically important British war industry. These bombings have later been labeled the Blitz. The accidents caused a lot of women and children to flee to the countryside. Here they were hiding at farms and in small towns which were unlikely to get bombed. The Blitz lasted for 8 months, and at one point the German Air Force Luftwaffe bombed London for 57 consecutive nights. The aim of the bombings was demoralize the English people and destroy their weapon industry. Neither of these goals seemed to succeed. However, it has been claimed that the bombings actually only roused the English people's fighting spirit, and the bombing of the war industry was not really organized and did not achieve the desired effect.
The late author of Narnia, Clive Staples Lewis, was one of the persons who roused the fighting spirit through his Christian radio speeches. The life of many fleeing British children is shown in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe as the brothers and sisters Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. They are living in London where the bombings were worst, and even at night they had to be careful. They are sent away to an old professor who lives in the heart of the country. Here they are absolute safe from the war and can dream themselves away from the rest of the world. The story shows that when life is difficult, the best way to cope with the problems may be to dream you away and imagine a completely different world. In the book, this dream becomes reality when they evaporate into the country of Narnia.
Change. In Narnia, however, a war of its own is taking place, and the 4 children are forced to take part in this battle between good and evil. He may even be hinting that the children are actually wondering how the war is progressing in the real world. The course of the war in Narnia and the real war in Europe actually happens to develop almost the same. In Narnia, little by little, the snow begins to melt and the curse of the White Witch begins to wear off. Then Aslan is able to stand up against the witch and claim back the world that was once his. The same happens to be the case in the war in Europe, where Germany's dominance gradually becomes threatened by, among others, D-Day and the failed occupation of Moscow, until the Allied forces are able to push back the Germans and defeat them in their own country. Taking all into account, it seems as if C.S. Lewis has gotten a lot of ideas and inspiration for the war in Narnia, as the war in Europe has progressed. Also, in both stories, the outcome seems to be the same, as the Allied forces end up victorious.
Compared to reality, however, the war in Narnia claims nearly no victims from the good side, while in the real world such an outcome was obviously not the case. Everything seems perfect after the war in Narnia. The 4 children become kings and queens, and the perfect world order is immediately restored. The petrified prisoners of the witch are even brought back to life. In the real world, however, the problems didn't stop at this point. The Cold War had almost just begun. The fact that it took more than 40 years to re-establish a stable world order speaks for itself. Of course, C.S. Lewis couldn't have foreseen all this, but it's obvious that the tale of Narnia would be best suited with a happy ending, while C.S. Lewis might have suspected that it would not end nearly as smooth in the real world. Maybe he even tried to make his own suggestion on how the problems should be solved in the real world. In that way, the story is not only a tale of good and evil, but also a politically motivated text.
Finito, finito.